about, my experiences and about the career, my own career, share, how I look at anything related to career or the overall kind of, balance work and life. And I believe there are, a few questions and Raki will and I will chat about and then happy to answer any questions. But a little bit about myself. As Raki said, I'm Director of Strategy and Operations. Here, I particularly look after our relationship with Jihu, the joint venture company that GitLab investing for our China market. And I have been with GitLab for over 3 years now. I'm currently part of finance org, but until very recently, I was part of the office of the CEO. Um, I am based out of Sydney in Australia. So very lovely to meet you all, have this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Jen, for briefly introducing yourself. So how we'll structure today is we'll have 30 minutes of actual fireside chat and then 10 minutes over to everyone, like our attendees who have questions to ask Jen and any thoughts that they want to share. So we can begin from the start, Ian, then how your early life was. And would like you to share a bit about your background and how where you started from, that kind of thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, early life. I was born and grew up in China. The very first 5 years of my life was actually in a very small village on the eastern part of China, with, I don't know, maybe 100 and something people population. And I was, basically spent the 5 years running wild barefoot in mountains and in the rivers, catching fish and prawns and stuff like that. Uh, and Then I had my undergraduate education and started my career in Shanghai. So I started my career in 1999. It made me feel um, it's some time ago. And that was just the time of incredible booming years of that particular city and, country as a whole in China. And then in 2022, I I went to France and I stayed there for 4 years. And first of all, did a master degree, and then I landed a job in a French high tech company in the semiconductor industry. I was looking after entering and growing the markets in APAC region. So I was wearing lots of hats, all sorts of GTM hats, sales and BDs, ecosystem partners, enablement, field marketing, um, you know, anything and everything, sort of that to get that market going. 4 years later, I moved back to Shanghai, and not long afterwards, I took a newly created role at Microsoft, and I stayed with Microsoft for 7 years. However, I relocated to Sydney with that role, sort of a year and a half after I took on the initial role, and ever since 2008, I have been calling Sydney home. And yeah, so this is kind of obviously there's a lot more I can dive into, but this is a very quick overview of sort of my life a little bit starting from the very beginning.
Yes, I really love the part about your early childhood in China and how raw it was. I think that's something that we don't get these days. So thank you for sharing that. And like when you said like you grew up in like interior of China, right? What was the outlook towards work and how did like success look like for people, back then?
Yeah, I think back then, obviously, and I basically have been living my life alongside the incredible development uh, of the economy in China, for example, and the globalization, and obviously being able to see different parts of the world. But my early years, that was the year when, you kind of like work ethic is extremely important because you always are expected to do the very best of your capability, and you study really, really hard because that provides you sort of a path for growth and um, for making a change to the life that your previous generation didn't have, and that was kind of ingrained. You never really challenged that sort of philosophy. So you always push yourself to do the very best of your ability, and you very, very eager, hungry to learn as much as you can. And while the economy was obviously going through um, like just dramatic transformation, you also opened your horizon, not only, what's going on in China, but then learn so much. You open your eyes to, the rest of the world, and it's huge and rapid development. So that's also shaped a lot of how I look at things. When I look back now, I'm like, I almost took the development and the growth for granted because that's was my life experience for the first sort of 20, 30 years. It just happened, from all aspects of life, and whether it's career, whether it's, personal life and life quality and all these things, right? Um, so I think all these things obviously had a big impact on how I look at um, career, how I look at work and choice in career. In terms of choices career, I think the very first job in that kind of environment of booming, of growth, really set the tone, and also the opening up of China to the rest of the world is like so is think globally but act locally. So
Mhm.
that is really definitely the tone throughout my career. Did I particularly choose that? No, I don't think so. It's I think looking back, it's also a lesson, sometimes a bit of how you land in certain place at a certain time. You happen to be there. I was born into that. I didn't choose
Mhm.
that, but that has, a huge impact on how your life turns out to be. That includes definitely the career choices.
That is really wonderfully put, Yan. But do you also think that because that you had that experience, you are where you are today, or do you think if you were in a different culture or different, experience, it would have been a different outcome altogether, or you would have chosen differently in life?
Maybe I would not know. I live only one life. I can't really see what the other possible. If I had different choice, I was born to a different time, different place. My gut feeling, yes, definitely, because I think uh, a lot of things we're born into is like it's the bigger context of what's happening around you and in the world that plays a huge role. And but obviously, um, it's a bit of mixture between your nature and nurture in a way when it comes to the translating into the career choices as well. Obviously, afterwards, how you show up and what kind of intentional choices you make within that big contest definitely plays a role. But I still, yeah, do think there's a incredible amount of impact and the power of just biological lucky draw, I guess.
Yeah, but I'm happy that you're happy wherever you are now, so that's good. So yeah, so to the next point, like section that we have regarding career path. What was your first promotion in your career like, and when was it for you?
My very first promotion was actually just 1 year after, in my first job, I was promoted from account executive to account manager. Um, and I was with just a bit of context. It was a advertising company called J. Walter Thompson, that was part of WPP, and they are a US company, but being part of a big UK group. Um, they they entered China not long before I joined the company. As part of what I was saying, the country was going through, bringing a lot of international business was entering China. So um, the business grow tremendously, just alongside the entire market. So the promotion, obviously it felt great, but to be very honest, I didn't even feel particularly very special because it was almost kind of expected. That was like the company was growing so rapidly, and I wasn't the only one getting the promotion. Obviously, I clearly was doing my job all right, but it was the overall context that's really enabled it. So it went back, goes back to kind of what I was saying a bit early on, being at the right place at the right time is. equally important, if not more important, as how you show up in your work yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
both play, important roles.
Totally agree with that. And if from your perspective, right, what would you give an advice to first timers who are really looking to get promoted early on? Maybe it could be 1 year for someone or 2, 3 years into their early career.
Um, I Personally, so first of all, a caveat. I've been with the company for 3+ years and I haven't gone through a promotion cycle myself here in the company. So take all that I'm going to say, with a bit of grain of salt. But I always personally always approach the promotion as an opportunity to one, to reflect, and what are my skill sets, what values I bring, what I have done good, and what I could do differently and or do better. So that's a process of self-reflection, but also a very important alignment with your manager, your large context, your peer that you're working with. And if you talk about specific promotion, like make sure you align with your manager, what that may look like in that particular group and the particular function, how they look at the thought process of getting a promotion or not. And also understand just, not only for my own job in particular, but also in the bigger context of, what's the needs of the company.
Mm.
And is that, like, and also what are the overall sort of context of the promotional company, how company is doing, obviously, how well the company is doing plays the role of overall budget. Let's just be honest, right? That's also part of the business evaluation when it comes to promotion. So I think, but overall, I think, making sure you have that, take that opportunity as a um, alignment opportunity to have this conversation with your manager. And I think it's extremely valuable whether you're looking at, promotion in short period of time or longer horizon. Um, so yeah, that's how I typically approach, a conversation like that.
Gotcha. So yeah, and to summarize it, sort of like internal and external factors lead to where like the next promotion or 2, 3 promotions or wherever you want to be next. So yeah, but all
Yeah,
we can influence is how we show up where we are. So I think that's what we should look at. So
absolutely.
but
Yeah,
like
I
look.
can't agree
Mhm.
more, Raki, on this. And I think in our sort of conversation previously, I always focus on making sure you focus on the things under our own control, um, and have the awareness, obviously, with external factors, but focus on most of the energy on the things that we personally can control.
That's true. And for context, Yin and I met through a women mentorship program, and that's how we know each other. But yeah, so but like looking back at your career, right? Was there any particular moment or decision that you felt like that changed the course of your whole journey? And what made you decide on taking that leap, if you did?
I d- uh, you know, I actually do not think there was just one moment, changed my trajectory. And I attribute, and I said, my first job actually really set the tone for my entire career, think global, act local. But then I really had a real privilege to be able to navigate a developing career, in different countries, different continents, and speaking different languages. And it is um, and also had the opportunity to do quite a few different things, wearing professional hats. So it has been both a real privilege, but a huge challenge as well, how you make sure you are actually your skills are relevant in different countries, right? How you stay competitive while, working your second or even third language, and how do you navigate the different social and business norms, and how do you progress when you move across the
Mm,
ocean instead of, not feeling that you have to kind of start over again. I
mm,
think these are the real challenges that comes with the privilege of being able to do so. For me, I think I reflect back, and obviously, it takes me years, and I still work in the progress in terms, what that means for my, next steps in my career development. But I I look back and I think for me, what has been really helpful in my own experience is to, first of all, make sure, I have a unique set of um, skill sets and experience that kind of coherently developed into my career narrative. So for me, for example, the things around enable business to expand globally and in different capacity, right? It might be, but just expansion global, so always in the global context is really, really always consistent and important for me. And um, yeah, and also it's very helpful to always get more clarity on the right kind of environments. I said already, what happens outside of is out of control, but making sure you, as much as you can, get clarity what other kind of environments your skill sets will be valued and you will enjoy, and the kind of person and team members you enjoy working with. And I think getting that kind of clarity definitely also helps with navigating while I have been navigating through different environment.
Got it. I mean, one thing that I could definitely understand is like the skill set of adaptability is something that has helped you navigate different countries, different roles, different organizations, different even domains, I think, that you have, experienced in your career so far. So, during this course, was there any time when you had a career advice that was given to you that seemed counterintuitive at that point of time, but then you felt like, oh, that's something that's invaluable. I should have done that at that point of time.
I like I've received many, many advices from, many, many people I work with or encountered. I wouldn't say, any particular one is a counterintuitive. I kind of always look at all the advices as, first of all, as blessing, and secondly, whether you take it on, whether you think these advice are actually, the most appropriate one at that particular time. I think I always tend to take approach, let's analyze, right? But I always take on board the advices. But the one that I always remember is from my very first manager of my very first company, because it was an advertising company. Branding was
Mhm.
really, really important. So his advice was, as almost day one, and he said, treat yourself as a brand and build that brand throughout your career, and no matter what you do, right? So I always remember that. So how do I want to be remembered as a professional? And that has a, big impact on how I, choose to show up, whether there are people watching or not, right? So obviously, I think I'm still evolving my own branding, professional branding. Definitely, continue to evolve, and it's ultimately it's up to the others to actually evaluate, to have a say on what branding I have. But it's something that I always remembered and has been sort of, something I always goes back to have a think, um, particularly when I, at the crossroads of making choices.
True. And I think especially now with the era of social media, LinkedIn, I think branding really plays a huge difference in where you land up, your network, and the kind of opportunities you get. So I think that's so true and still holds true right now as it did back then. So
Yeah.
like in any career, right, there definitely are certain opportunities you have to let go or some trade-offs you have to make. Uh, were there any such moments that you ever had to do? And was there anything that you wish you had handled in a different manner, at least?
Um, If I knew everything that I will know when I enter the final chapter of my life, I would have made different choices, but I didn't, and I still don't at this point. So I think what I always tell myself is to make the best decision based on the information I've got at that moment, and then from that moment on, honor your decision and own what's good and what's bad out of it, and learn the lesson if you need to and move on, right? So
Mm.
um and one thing I think Raki and you and I spoke quite a lot when we were having our sessions is, how do you balance work and life, and how they may look quite differently at different stages of our
Mm.
lives, right? And then to be comfortable with that of making the choices uh, in life. So I think I have learned definitely throughout different stages of my life, and I always career and professional performance and outcome has always been a one of the most important things in my life, but I also learned since not extremely intuitively and easily, but I am I try to learn the when certain um, things happen in your life or a different, certain stage of your life. For example, when I became a new mother, it's like obviously, you have to um, balance things quite differently, and then that required me to even think more thoroughly what is really important and focus on the really important things and impactful things instead of trying to fill up the time because you don't have that time um,
Mm.
at hand anymore as much as you had before, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm not even sure I answered this question really, but
But yeah, I think like, that's there's like seasons in our careers, I think, there's sometimes we put in too much and sometimes we have to intentionally hold back to also allow other things to pass on, like be it family, being like a new mother. So I think those are the small trade-offs and sacrifices we make. But then like every journey doesn't have to be like a plateau. It doesn't have to always be 100% effort. And it's okay to sometimes, take a step back and again come back up. So I think yeah, it's okay is what we need to tell ourselves. And from that, I actually want to ask you, like you are a director now, so which is like a people manager role. So what made you decide between being an individual contributor role versus being into the management stream? I think that's something a lot of us, especially during the promotion cycle, talent assessment, think about like, what should I choose, right? And we don't know where we're going to be, right? So, like, we can only decide based on what we know. So, for you, what was the decision like, and what influenced those particular decisions for you?
First of all, a small correction, Raki. So my title is director, but I actually is the individual contributor in the sense that I do not actually have a team that reports into me. So it's indeed a interesting kind of role. It doesn't, typically the more senior you go and the bigger team you have, and but in this particular role, interestingly, I'm a IC, a direct level IC. Now, obviously, I had in the past, I had, people management roles, and I had direct reports of, 10 plus and have more sort of dotted line reports. So, and I wouldn't say that I'll rule out, one day I go back to being a team manager, a people manager. But that's, I think, it illustrates the the it's not always, these two tracks, obviously, people management and IC specialists. These two tracks are not necessary. Now, obviously, at any given point, you can only be one or the other,
Mhm.
right? But they don't have to be mutually exclusive, meaning that you can't sort of zigzag a little bit and always, you can come back and forth a little bit. But what's most important for me is, you ask how I evaluate whether you take on this role or that role. And I would say, at least at this, up till this point, how I look at the role is like the kind of impact you could
Mm.
have and whether how much it aligns with, my the skill sets, the interest and the potential of growth. Um, that particular role offers. And now, obviously, the people management skills is an extremely important skills, extremely valuable skills. And I have taken a lot of, what I learned being a people manager in the past into my current role, although I don't really have a direct team to manage, but in the way, really the skills of leadership, skills of influence, skills of achieving the outcome through others. In a way, it's even more important when you don't have a direct team because you do have to be able to influence others without direct authority. It's like it's in a way it's a higher level of skill set if you wish, and then achieve through others definitely is it's a integral part of my role. So my philosophy of, looking at IC and people manager, obviously each of these paths comes with its good and bad, and have, understanding clarity of one, of all the, plus and minus of each track if you're interested in, exploring the other track, and particularly from IC to people manager. That's how typically, people evolve, in making sure you have a understanding of the good and bad, and have the clarity of what is, what really drives you towards a people manager role. Is it purely because that sounds better? That's it's kind of what's expected to progress, or it's something else. It's your desire to, have bigger impact through others, desire to enable others to succeed, and desire to have more accountability. And, having a people manager does, come with more accountability and responsibility. Does that excite you, or does that, make
Yeah.
you more nervous? And I think getting that kind of clarity is it will be really, really helpful. And yeah, and I think also getting the feedback from others is also definitely always helpful.
Awesome. That's great insights. Thank you for that, Jen. And imagine if someone today at GitLab wants to get promoted in the next two cycles. What should they start doing differently in their day-to-day? Like, how would one approach it?
I think if you're particular looking at um, progressing in career in one way or another, and making sure, one, what that means for yourself, right? Is it the bigger scope? Is it you want to do more challenging things? And if you um, dive deeper in one particular specialty, and sort of getting that kind of clarity for yourself. And I think because all of us, each of us is very different in, what we envision as that's, progress, what progress means. And when it comes to particular promotion, obviously it's in the context of, for example, GitLab or any company, right? In the context of your particular team, particular role. And make sure that I think I mentioned earlier, make sure you have that conversation alignment with your management team, right? The leadership, and having an understanding of that as well. But I think once again, most importantly, making sure you utilize that opportunity. Do not fixated on
Mm.
a title. It's very easy to do, and I'm in myself included, right? And because getting a more senior title, moving on to means whole different things, including better compensation. That looks better on my LinkedIn profile for sure. Um, but try not to be fixated on these things, but you really like, okay, utilize that as a process to making sure you up your game in your skill set, in your experience, and stretch yourself. And that's, I think it's in long run, it's definitely more valuable.
That definitely does make sense. So yeah. Um, and in fact, if there's some time in your career when you had a promotion, what do you think was the kind of work that made the most influence the decision of the promotion? What do you think that kind of work was for you?
Sorry, say it again. Are you talking about in my experience? Can
Yes,
you?
in your
Yeah.
career, what was the kind of work that you did? What impact, I mean, the kind of impact that it had that was different from the other work that you're doing that led to you having a promotion at different phases in your career?
Oh, okay. Thanks for the clarification. I think it depends on that particular circumstance, I would say. But for example, um, it tends to comes more easily when you kind of stretch out of your current what you're doing, and then take on stretch project, and sort of explore other thing, do other thing, take on the things that you have never tried, or step up to solve a rather challenging problems in the business, and also making sure that you're also enabling others to uh, to succeed as well. And I think that tends to make it more easier, I think, to for your manager to support your promotion, I guess. and because that
Got.
you know, makes immediate sense for the business. Yeah.
Nice. I really like the part about how you said that you also need to take others along with you. And I think the part about going outside of comfort zone comes from the fact also having curiosity and interest in trying out different things. So I agree with you on that. Thank you. Um, and what is one thing that you feel? I know, like you mentioned, that you haven't ever gone through the promotion cycle here, but what is one thing that you, in your past experience, felt like was missing from promotion documents or in how they pitch to management and how they communicate what they want? What do you think those particular aspects are for you?
I think it probably overall, it's not particularly, with regard, I think our promote doc, there's a lot of value information that makes sure, it's aligns with the credit value, which is amazing. I think that's not something that is a common practice in many companies, actually, making the promotion doc and how it's connected to the value of the company. I think it's extremely valuable, and I really appreciate the fact that we even have a big section in that. I think in each of that kind of conversation, not only promotion really, but when you look at okay, your natural progress, whether it means a promotion or not, is to have an understanding of what the business requirement is. It's
Mm.
kind of almost to
Mhm.
walk backwards. You remember how I
Mhm.
recently was just having this conversation with my daughter and how to, if she wants to get a good mark and she's like, okay, a good mark and top of the class, what do I need to study? I'm like, okay, I think the first thing you need to study, there's a difference between studying and learning things and getting marks. If your goal is getting good marks in exams, making sure you know exactly how they mark your exam, how to give how they grade, right? And making sure you know the rules and making sure whether that what they are looking at. So similar thing if we translate into the sort of corporate environments, making sure we understand what matters for the company, for the business, and what is the big bets of the business function you are in, and how your work actually is related and directly contribute to that. And I think that makes the business case a lot more easier, and then to be aligned on across the board, because at the end of the day there will be calibration beyond your immediate team and among the peers, and the higher you go, the amount of calibration across functionally is even more important. So alignment with the higher purpose and higher goals, and I think it's always never too bad.
Yeah, I think it's just not all about us, but also what the business wants at different points of time.
Yeah,
Understanding that and able to fulfill that is what gets you to the next level, I think.
yeah.
So yeah, and in during this journey, right? Like how important have you felt like having a mentor, sponsor, or a very supportive manager has been for you?
Oh, I think it's incredibly important. When I was young, I wish I knew this earlier, and being more intentional about reaching out to mentors and having coaches, and have this your allyship and support group. I have been lucky even without intentionally realizing that. And I looking back, I have really had incredible managers and coaches and people who kind of mentors, right, to me, although probably they didn't wear that particular hats. I didn't attribute these titles to them, but
Mhm.
advices and feedback, I think this is always incredibly important. And make sure um, so my advice is to make sure reach out to the people like you have naturally. You have your manager, you have the people you work with, and give you feedback and treat feedback always as a blessing, and appreciate and people actually taking time to give you feedback, because it's not do not take for granted people giving you feedback.
Mhm.
Appreciate that.
Mhm.
And um, do not take it very personally, although it's obviously easier said than done. But learn from other feedback, and making sure you also balance the feedback of the things that you're good at and people that tells you. So make sure you remember that and build on these strengths, because because it's quite easy for us to kind of focus on, just forget about all the good things and people tell you do, but then focus on the like one thing that you kind of missed as a feedback. So
Yeah.
balance
Mm,
these out
mm,
a little bit. There
mm,
is a tendency for people who are aiming to high perform to focus
mm,
on the negative, and then make sure you balance that. And second advice is make sure that when you can, and it probably comes earlier than you think, also give back and mentor others, give feedback to others, and support others to succeed, enable others to be the best version of
mm,
they can, like, and to sort of share perspective. That's probably the blind spot of themselves. So support others and sort of turn this around. I think in the process, anyone who has been mentor and coach will tell you they themselves learn huge amounts out of
mm.
that process as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I think it's also very, very insightful to people and others around you, especially juniors who look up to you and also learn from it and step up, you know. So that's
Yeah.
incredible. Sure. And especially like in today's age, so much has been changing so, so fast, right? What are the skill set or mindsets, especially during this very transformational stage that has been critical, that would be critical for the next generation of, people who are in the industry?
I think just keep learning, right? Things change so much. We should really just always learning, and also importantly unlearning, things. And
Mm,
um, there may, be things that worked in the past and will no longer work. So learning and unlearning, keep the curiosity going, and always, the ability to ask good questions. I think in the age of AI, you've got all the knowledge base at your fingertip, but then we all know that good quality question and prompts make a huge difference. And then still do not let go of the thinking thought process, of the ability to think independently, critically, and to be able to synthesize the information that's presented, whether by AI tools or any other huge amount of information we've got. So let the tools, use the tool, embrace the tools, but do not, still we are in the driver's seat, if you wish, and to kind of navigate and filter through the information versus the noises. Yeah.
awesome. That's perfect. That's perfect. And do you think there has been a huge, huge change, when you started your career to now? Like, how has things changed for you? Do you think the same advice applies back then and now as well?
Oh, I would say I, I'm the person who kind of, I didn't start my career thinking, oh, I need to do this. I've got 5-year plan, 10-year plan. This is my ultimate goal. I was really led by a lot of curiosity. I was always led by curiosity a lot, and I wouldn't say that I'm the kind of person who had a very strict planning. It's, very uh, intensive planning in terms of my career. Um, should I have done more planning? Would that have been helpful? Possibly. But also possibly that means I probably would be more hesitant to take on, the things that was not kind of in my trajectory, which happened more often than I than I probably would have planned. So it's, I guess good and bad, but definitely I also learned along the way of, certain things you do need to be more intentional, particularly um, the more responsibility you get, the more and the more things on your plate. For example, you really have to be more intentional about making sure you focus on the things that matter, that things that
Mm,
have more impact, the right kind of impact, and have the better judgment of things. And you also have to learn to let go of other things. And so I think being more intentional on making the judgment call, and really focus on the impact and the right kind of impact. And I think it's definitely, it's one of the things that I have come to learn in my career.
that's a ton of good insights. And We really, really took so much from this session today, and it was very different aspect that we explored today. So, thanks for your time, Yen. And I would like if you have any questions, Deepika, you can go ahead. And yeah, thank you for your time today. And I think we're almost at our done with the session today. So yeah, anything that Yin you want to share with us about your experience, something out of the whole thing that we discussed today in the questions that were not captured.
Well, I hope it's of interest, of use. It's yeah, and I'd love to hear the feedback as well, you know, and if there are other questions and that come up afterwards, feel free to
Mhm.
drop me a line or, you know, tag me in the agenda on the digital questions and so set up coffee chats. Uh, Very happy to have more chats and to have the conversation around that. But also thank you, Raki, for organizing this session and asking me to share my experience. And hopefully it's helpful and useful and always a pleasure. And thank you for making this happen.
It's my pleasure, and I learned so much from you, like I always do in all of these sessions. So appreciate the time that you're given to us, and you shared your story here. I will definitely tag you and let our attendees know that you are free to take up any questions. So yeah, thank you so much for today,
It was
and
a
hope you
pleasure.
have a good one.
You, Ian. I've been just listening and I didn't realize it was very informative. I just had a different perspective of like, that's what experience is. So thank you so much for sharing everything. I like how you said just, reinforcing do the right things and, in this, just be impactful and otherwise we just, dive into the other things when we are doing with the career. So, yeah, really helpful. Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm pleased to hear that it resonated, Deepika. Thank you for sharing that.
No, it did.
Oh.
It really did. Like it, I have been smiling all along. So thank you so much.
So pleased to hear.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that, Deepika. And I had such a great time leading this particular conversation and learn something from you again. And I hope to have this soon again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. Thank
Yeah.
you, Raki. Thank you,
And
everyone.
thank you, everyone.
Bye for
And
now.
see you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.